Hey, well, it was pretty nice out again, as you could see. So, I figured, hey, why not record some video again while I'm just out enjoying the sun, I guess, on this fairly nice day. And so, what I was going to talk about was something that was kind of not really bothering me per se, but it was just something I'd been thinking about recently. And that is, so within this community, whatever you want to call it, this truth community and such, this truth pursuit, we, at least the channels that I watch, the people I watch, we like to talk about how we know that we are powerful beings, that we are powerful creators, such and such. And, as infinite beings that we say we know that we are, we have all of the abilities within us and all of the power within us to essentially, at least we know with our spiritual side, we know that we have the capability for anything, the infinite capability. But then there's also others that don't seem to talk about as much, which I can understand as well. But the idea that even if we as spiritual beings have infinite capability, why in this fake matrix, whatever you want to call it, simulation reality that we are experiencing here in these avatars, why don't we translate that into the same abilities here in that way? Like, why do we, for some reason, ignore that fact or possibility that we have just as much power and influence in this simulation as we do outside of it or whatever? Like, and hey, the entire Matrix movie kind of goes with that, with Neo and all the other awakened people or whatever, the other red pillars, doing these things inside of the Matrix, these amazing feats and such, dodging bullets or whatever, stopping bullets and everything, all this acrobatic stuff. And yeah, well, that is the whatever you want to call it, the media, the system's way of representing that in a way. I don't see why that. I'm not saying that I have some desire to do these crazy acrobatic things. If I wanted to, I could. I guarantee I could, but I don't really have much desire to do it personally. And the same thing with, do I have desire to stop bullets or whatever? Well, I don't feel that I have much practical reason to or desire to as well. But then there's other things, like when so many channels talk about this fact that we are these infinitely powerful beings and such, I do find it strange that most of them, at least that I've seen, most of them that I watch that talk about this, which admittedly isn't that many channels, like numerically, like I haven't watched like so many, but I'll say maybe not most of them, but I'll say a good amount of them, especially some of the bigger ones, they don't really talk about this at all, besides in the spiritual sense. Like, and I can understand where they're coming from to a degree, but I also see that as a missed opportunity, and two, it almost by default disempowers us to some degree with when one does not take that into consideration, that possibility or whatever. Like, all right, I'll just say, like, the Quantum of Conscious channel, Matt's, while, you know, I understand where he's coming from, he talks about the spiritual side of our infinite being and such, like, and with not, and I can understand, I think this as well, is like maybe not with as much confidence as you should, I guess, like, with almost trying to convince himself, I guess, like almost with self-doubt. And they don't really talk about why we should try to hone our, I wouldn't say lost, but our forgotten abilities here or whatever. Like, why don't we try to do these things that we know we are able to do while we're here? Like, what would that really, I don't think that would be attaching to this place anymore. At least I don't think it is. And I don't know, I mean, with just me, like, I see so much, and at least over time for me, I've been getting, like, you know, I'm sure everybody has felt this, maybe more so recently, like, I've been incredibly bored sometimes. I don't know, I've been feeling incredible boredom, it feels like, at times nowadays. It seems like when you know these things, it is obviously not like automatically something that can be good. Like, there's obviously some downsides that comes with this. Like, you realize that this place is an illusion, obviously, and all that stuff. But then you also realize certain things, like certain pursuits that you might have been doing before, they become much more meaningless, or they have much less meaning when you realize how fake this place is. Obviously, like, when I was young, or, you know, younger, when I was, like, in high school and stuff, I was a fool that thought that, you know, I believe the global warming junk, all of that agenda being pushed, that idea that you need to do this, you need to recycle, you need to save, you need to save energy, blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, you know, we're all doomed and all that crap. Humanity will not last, blank, we're going to run out of oil and all this. So I was like, oh, man, my dream is, at that time, I was like, oh, I'm going to be I don't know, like a an electrician kind of thing to try and push the renewable energy junk. And at that time, you know, that was my, I guess you could say, dream at the time. But then, you know, after a point, I realized, like, how bullcrap that all was. Like, you know, oil is not a limited resource. It is just either a synthesized thing or a thing that doesn't get used nearly as much as they say it does, especially with the commercial airline industry and such. Complete lies there. Just, it's not something that is a limited resource like we're told, and it doesn't come from what we were told, all that. But it is not a finite resource. It is something that is just been made to seem that way, or has been made, we've been brainwashed by the society to believe that, and be afraid of it, I guess, to be concerned about that. Same thing with all the other energy things, like, oh man, electric cars, you know, the hilarious irony of that, like, oh, yeah, we're gonna have electric cars that are going to run off the power grid to charge, but most of that power is still being, at least from what we're told, most of that is being generated by stuff like burning coal, burning fuel, supposedly limited resources. So you're just doing a more inefficient thing than just burning straight gasoline for your car to propel itself. So completely ridiculous. But I was thinking this stuff when I was younger. And then when I broke that programming, I guess you could say, when I learned about these things, I realized that they're all BS. It kind of left somewhat of a void of like, oh, what am I going to do now? Or what's my quote unquote dreams now? And that happened later. So I wasn't completely like that, but then I was like, all right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to spend my time learning coding, programming, whatever you want to say, working with machines, computers, and all this junk. And while I still do that to some degree, I've realized, like at least for me, and I think a lot of people recently, especially with the video game industry or whatever, like, I've become much less interested in video games than I used to be. Like, I don't really have as much desire to play video games as I used to. And this one I don't really know why exactly. Like, I know why, but it just kind of, I've lost a lot of desire to play video games like I used to, and depending on the video game. Like, I would play some of this stuff for hours and hours and hours every day, all day, every day. And now it is a chore to even be like, man, what do I want to play, or should I play anything? And then just actually like opening the game up at all and playing. And while I'm doing that, sometimes I'm just thinking like, man, I could be doing something else. You wouldn't even have to be awakened to feel that sometimes, but it is such a shift for myself that now I am feeling a void to some degree, where it's like, what do I want to do? Because even when I make videos, like I have been, and I've been enjoying doing it, like, I'm mostly doing it for myself, and I'm mostly doing it for myself, and I'd like if people commented about it and such, or commented on the videos more, so I would have, like, at least the perception of other people to be talking with, I guess. Like, I'm not completely alone, and I know people like Kristoff have brought this up, and I kind of completely understand where he's coming from, I guess. Almost the idea of, like, solipsism and such. Like, I really don't believe the whole idea of solipsism, like, that it is that I am the only person in this place. Possibly I'm the only person in my own reality bubble to some degree, but I do believe that there is other people here. I don't believe that I'm like the center of this place. I don't believe that. But it does feel like that sometimes. Like, when I make videos, and I can understand I don't really get that many comments and such because it's a small channel, and I completely am, like, mostly fine with that, but it does get you thinking, like, man, is there anybody out there? It's like, the idea of being lost in space or whatever. You're like, is anybody out there? Hello? Like, am I really alone here? Holy crap. And I guess you don't really feel the feeling of being completely, like, alone or whatever until you kind of get that sensation. You're like, is there anybody out there? Am I completely isolated? Like, I can't even talk to anybody, it feels like, about anything, like, on a personal level or whatever, because it's either, you're either talking to an NPC, and as soon as you say anything outside of their boundaries, they will just dismiss you, or you'll just be like, hey, you're a nut job. And then when you try to talk with some of these people, other people that you think are also in your same, either they are maybe some levels, I don't want to say that, like, they're at a different level than you, and you still can't really communicate that well, because they'll say like, oh, you're just a, I don't know, they'll say, you're just a, you know, if you got to that point, they would be like, oh, political parties or something like that. Like, they're at a different rung on that quote-unquote awakened ladder or whatever. And, you know, it sucks to a degree because you do feel really isolated or alone or whatever, because, I don't know, it sounds so stupid knowing that you are this infinite being and everything, but, you know, depending on what you believe or whatever, I could see why a god or something like that, like if there is a singular god, which I personally really don't know, obviously, I don't know 100% if there's a singular god or not, or something, some creator being. I believe there's a source to all this, but, like, I could see that it would be incredibly lonely, you know, like, lonely, I don't feel like loneliness per se, but I just feel like, man, you feel isolated, and I don't know, you just, I'm trying not to seem like that, because I don't feel like I need other people, but to some degree, it really does feel like that as well. Like, man, if you have no one else to relate to, or talk to, or, I don't know, bounce ideas off of it, it really does feel, like some kind of void. I don't know, it's hard to explain. And I'm sure other people feel this way, but then it confuses me at the same time that a lot of them don't seem to want to communicate with those people or whatever. I don't know. There's just something about it. But I kind of completely got off, but maybe I'll edit this. So what I was originally talking about was that channels and people that are in this community and such, they don't really talk about our powers that we know we have, and they don't really relate them, or they don't connect like, hey, you know, why don't we try and hone them or relearn them or realize them so we can actually use them in this place while we're here? Because while this place is a test in some form, it is a simulation definitely, but it is a test in some form as well. Why not, while you're, you know, there's so many instances, at least for myself, where it's like, you know, what are you going to do every day? What are you going to do every day? What are you going to do to fill that time while you're here in some degree? Like, you know, you could jerk off every day, but that gets boring. You know, that gets boring and old pretty quick. And, you know, you could do whatever. Like me, I still want to work on games and mod games and stuff that I have done, but it also does, like, man, I feel like doing something different, or not so much different, but I feel like doing something that, I don't know, occupies that time better. It's very hard to explain, but I'm sure that people know what I'm talking about to a degree. So that's what I'm saying, like, with these honing these abilities, is I feel like that's just one of those things that, you know, one, you already know, and to even use those abilities, you have to know that they exist and that you have them, if you've always known them. But I guess being able to show them to yourself is very important as well, to kind of realize, you know, seeing is believing kind of thing. But like, that's the thing, is like, you can't do these things unless you believe it wholeheartedly, kind of stuff. Like, that's one of the most important parts of it. But it's like, you know, why don't we practice this stuff instead of just saying that we have these powers? Like, why don't we actually try? And, you know, even channels like, but maybe it's because he has a completely different opinion on this world than I do, like Kristoff. He talks about a lot of interesting topics, but he doesn't really talk about this I think he believes that we do have incredible power here and everything, but maybe so much where he's talking about stuff like the sun being God and everything, he probably does have a different opinion to some degree of what we are here for and why we're here and all that stuff. So I can't really say on that. But the only channels that I listen to that I know of or whatever that really talk about this kind of stuff, trying to use our powers in some degree and realize we have them, is like Danny's channel, and I think the Silent Hunter, I think that is his channel name somewhere, the Silent Hunter. They talk about this more, and I don't know, that's just something that I can agree with in a lot of ways. Like, why don't we try to use these abilities we know we have, and why don't we try to practice them to a degree, or put them in practice here? Like, why, what, I don't know, what else are we doing? Like, what else are we doing here? It's obviously something that is a good way to use that time, I figure. And I don't know, I just look at it like, unless you have kids or whatever, you have these other responsibilities and all that junk. I don't know, what else is there to do? Like, it's a good way to occupy time, I figure, at the very least, if not so many other things that could come from it. And I don't want to anchor to this place, and I don't think that honing those powers or relearning them is something that would anchor you to this place. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to get at, is like, maybe we should try to embrace our own powers we know we have more, and practice them and hone them and such. Realize that, and not try to just be like, all right, we're just going to wait until we die, and then that's when our power is going to be noticed or realized. It's like, why don't we do it while we're here? It's like, because we're going to be here, so for many of us, we're going to be here pretty damn long, maybe on the scale of the entire, of everything, yeah, it's going to be like as Matt would say, a step in and then step out of a closet, kind of how long it is compared to that. But at least from our perception, with our perception of linear time and all that crap, it feels like a relatively long time that our lifespan will be. So it's like, why don't we use something like that to occupy that time, I guess? Like me, just yesterday, I was thinking about this, and I was like, you know what? Why don't I try something? So I looked up, like, I was like, I don't know, what was the first thing that came to my mind that I could think of? And I was like, let's look up how we might do telekinesis or something like that, like moving objects with your quote-unquote mind, or moving objects with just not touching them and everything. And it was something that was interesting, because I really hadn't never looked up stuff like that. And so long ago, I would have looked at that and almost like scoffed at it, like, oh, that's ridiculous. This is just magic trick stuff. But now I look at it completely differently. Like, I see it completely differently. And now I completely understand why one of the first things the person says is that you have to, at least in that particular thing I was reading, you have to believe. You have to believe. Just like, at least I've come to that kind of thing, is like, maybe planes, they do not get lift, or they do not get lift from fuel and all this other crap with physics and all that junk. But the lift and the safety, relative safety of the actual flight comes from the belief of all the people on said plane that it is so safe, and that it's all this stuff. They believe it completely, and therefore it is the reality. Like, it is a completely safe form of travel, all that stuff, and that's why almost no planes ever crash commercially. So, I could totally see that 100%. But what this person's saying with the telekinesis, like, yeah, you have to believe, and I would see that with everything basically in this regard. And so I was like, all right, let's try it out, just to give it a shot, do something with it, just like exercising, just try it out. So what I did, I was like, I don't know, what's something? I was like, hey, I could do anything. I can move anything if I wanted to. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this other stuff, like, on one specific object. I was like, here's my doorknob in my room. So I looked at the doorknob, it was locked. I was like, let me see if I can, with my mind or whatever, with enough focus, actually unlock it. And I just sat there. I shouldn't have been listening to music, but I was like, hey, I'm comfortable, fuck it. And I was just looking at this, focusing on this doorknob and this door for like over an hour, just sitting there. Like I said, I shouldn't have been listening to music, but I was just doing that. And, like, I would say that I had complete belief that it would happen, or that it would move, it would unlock or whatever, the whole time. At least I was telling myself that the whole time. And I do have complete belief, but there is still some kind of, that doubt within your mind that your body or whatever, your stupid thinking brain gives you, that it's like, hey, maybe this isn't, maybe this won't happen or something. But during that, I was telling myself the whole time, I have complete belief that I can do this, that it will happen. But, even after that short amount of time, I could tell myself maybe it moved a little bit, but as far as I could have seen, didn't really change anything. But hey, I tried, and I'm sure I will try again and again and again at some point. But it was an interesting practice, at least. It was an interesting thing to give a shot. And then there was another thing that I'm not, I believe that you could potentially, you could fly. I think anything is possible, just like Neo did and all that. You just have to be willing to face that fear of jumping from a high place or whatever and flying or something. Just like the birds. They have complete faith in that, because, hey, how do you teach the baby how to fly? You throw it out of the nest, and then if it knows it can fly, it'll fly. As soon as it needs to, it'll fly. But I was like, okay, I want to try something else. So I was like, all right, this one was especially important to me, I think, was how to empty your mind, I guess you could say. Like, because for whatever reason, later on in that day, I had felt kind of depressed, I guess you could say, or whatever. I'd felt feelings of some kind of not positive feelings or whatever. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if I could try that. So I looked up something, just a simple thing, how to empty your mind and all that, basically like meditation, what would generally be the term, I guess. And I tried it before I went to bed, and, I think it actually did work. Like, I 100% know it did work to a degree. And I won't say that I was able to do it, say, like Pooh did, where I was able to completely detach from myself or whatever and all thoughts. But I definitely think it helped in clearing my mind in that moment and being able to, I guess, relax, be in the now or whatever. And this was literally like one of the first times I had tried this kind of thing to a degree. And I was like, hey, it actually had some tangible results from what I saw. So I was like, hey, it's awesome. I'm definitely going to try this again or do it again. Especially when I need to relax or something, or I'm having these negative thoughts that aren't helpful at all. But, that was my first day of trying these kind of things. And I think that other channels, maybe it would be a good idea for them to do the same, or maybe for them to try these kind of things instead of just kind of, I don't know, assuming that the best thing to do is just to wait until you're dead and then worry about her. I don't know. It's like, you know, what else? What else are we doing besides just messing around and screwing around in these other kind of ways or whatever while we're here? So, yeah, anyway, I think that's enough talking for now, and thanks for watching.